Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into 10 foundational ideas that pretty much shape our entire world. If you've ever wondered about the hidden forces that drive decisions, everything from your daily coffee run to huge government policies, well, these 10 principles are the key. So, to get our heads around something as massive as the economy, let's start with something we all get: a family. A household is constantly managing its resources, right? There's only so much time, so much money, maybe just one car for everyone. You have to make decisions about who does what and who gets what. And that really gets to the heart of it all. The reason we have to manage anything, in a house or in a whole society, is because of one single core problem: scarcity. Simply put, we have limited stuff, but we have unlimited wants. And that tension right there is what created the entire field of economics. It's just the study of how we deal with that problem.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with how you make decisions. Then we'll zoom out to see how we all interact. And finally, we'll look at the big picture of how the whole economy works before we wrap it all up.
Okay, let's jump right in with the first 4 principles. This is the bedrock, and it's all about the choices you make every single day, often without even realizing it.
Principle number 1 is an oldie but a goodie. People face trade-offs. You've heard the saying, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. To get one thing you want, you almost always have to give up something else you want. Think about your time. Every hour you spend studying for one class is an hour you can't spend studying for another, or sleeping, or working. It's the same for countries when they choose between guns and butter. More military spending means less money for things back home.
And that leads us perfectly into principle 2. The cost of something is what you give up to get it. Making smart choices means you have to compare the costs and the benefits. But here's the trick. The real cost isn't always what you think it is. Take college. You might list tuition, books, room and board, but you'd be missing the biggest cost of them all.
And this brings us to a huge concept in economics: opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is simply whatever you had to give up to get that thing. For most students, the single biggest opportunity cost of going to college isn't the tuition, it's the 4 years of wages they're not earning. That's a massive, often invisible, part of the true cost.
So how do we make these choices? Well, principle 3 says that rational people think at the margin. Now, don't get hung up on the word rational. In economics, it just means you're trying to do the best you can to hit your goals. And thinking at the margin, that just means you make decisions in small steps. You're not deciding between never studying or studying 24/7. You're deciding, should I study for one more hour? Here's a perfect example. Let's say an airline's average cost per seat is $500. The plane's about to take off with a few empty seats, and a standby passenger offers $300 for a ticket. Should the airline take it? Well, if you're only looking at the average cost, you'd say no. But if you think at the margin, the plane is flying anyway. The marginal cost, the extra cost of one more person, is basically nothing, maybe a can of soda. Since the marginal benefit of $300 is way bigger than that marginal cost, they absolutely should sell that ticket.
And because we're always weighing these marginal costs and benefits, it leads us to principle 4, which might just be the most important of all. People respond to incentives. Seriously, one economist said you could boil down all of economics to just that sentence. An incentive is anything that nudges you to act, a reward or a punishment. A higher price on apples is an incentive for you to buy pears instead. It's super powerful, and it's why policies have to be designed so carefully, because you can accidentally create incentives you never intended.
Okay, so those first 4 principles are all about how you, as an individual, make decisions. But we don't live in a bubble, do we? So the next 3 principles are all about how we interact with each other. Principle 5 is that trade can make everyone better off. It's so easy to see trade as a competition, where one country wins and the other loses. But that's not really how it works. I mean, think about your own family. You don't grow all your own food and build your own house, right? Of course not. You trade with other people, letting everyone specialize in what they do best. That lets you get way more stuff and better stuff at a lower cost. And the exact same logic applies to countries. This idea of trade flows right into principle 6. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. And you just can't talk about this without mentioning the father of modern economics himself, Adam Smith. Back in 1776, he made what is maybe the most famous observation in the entire field.
Smith had this incredible idea he called the invisible hand. He argued that when millions of people and companies just act in their own self-interest, they're guided by this invisible hand that actually produces good results for everybody. The butcher doesn't give you meat because he's a nice guy, he does it to make a living. But in looking out for himself, he ends up providing you with dinner. And prices are the tool the invisible hand uses to make it all work.
So, if this invisible hand is so great, why do we even need a government? Well, that brings us to Principle 7. Because while markets are awesome, they're not perfect. The government is crucial for a couple of big reasons. First, the invisible hand needs a referee. It needs the government to enforce the rules and protect property rights. You're not going to open a restaurant if you think someone can just walk in and steal your cash register. And second, sometimes the market just fails on its own. A factory pumping out pollution is a classic example of what economists call a market failure. In cases like that, or to deal with huge gaps in wealth, a good government policy can actually improve the outcome. All right, we've gone from you to how we interact. Now it's time to zoom all the way out and look at the last 3 principles. These are about how the entire economy works as one big system.
Principle 8. A country's standard of living depends on its ability to produce goods and services. I mean, the differences in living standards around the world are just mind-boggling. So why is there such a huge gap between the average American and the average Nigerian? The answer boils down to one word: productivity. That's it. How much stuff can a worker produce in an hour? Where workers are super productive, the standard of living is high. It's as simple as that.
Okay, what about when prices just keep going up and up? We call that inflation. And Principle 9 tells us that for almost every case of major long-term inflation, there's one main culprit. And that culprit is the government printing too much money.
If you want a scary, real-world example, just look at Germany after World War I. The government printed money like there was no tomorrow. And the result? In less than 2 years, the price of a newspaper went from basically nothing to 70 million marks. It's a brutal lesson. When a government creates huge amounts of money, the value of that money just plummets.
And finally, we get to Principle 10. And this is one that economists still debate a lot. So we just saw that in the long run, printing money causes inflation. But the short run effects are a little more complicated. Many economists think that boosting the money supply can actually kickstart spending, which encourages companies to hire more people and lowers unemployment. This creates a tough short-run trade-off. Policies that fight unemployment can sometimes cause more inflation and vice versa. It's a tricky balancing act. Whew, okay, we have covered a ton of ground, from your personal bank account to the entire global economy. Let's stick it all on one page and do a final review. And there you have it, the whole shebang. What's so cool about this is you can really see the structure. The first 4 principles, that's all about how you decide things. Then, the next 3 are about how we all interact in the marketplace. And finally, the last 3 give you that 30,000-foot view of the entire economy. It all connects, from the smallest choice to the biggest trend. And that's our journey through the 10 principles of economics, from the opportunity cost of you watching this right now, to the incentives that are changing gas prices, to the global trade that brought you the device you're watching on. These ideas are literally everywhere. You now have a brand new lens to see the world more clearly.